There we go. I have a question for the crowd. If any of you are Tribune subscribers, does anyone get the newsletter mine came at 12:41 p.m. today. Does anyone see what the headline was? No? Okay. Wildfire smoke approaching Chicago as air quality alert remains in effect. So this is not an abstract topic. This is in our lives, ever present, and very real. And so that's why the first panel was not to scare, not to alarm, but to evoke a sense of urgency. This next panel is focused on what are some uplifting, innovative ideas and solutions, not pipe dreams, but things already happening and coming out of Chicago. So we've got some great innovators that you're about to hear from. And it's my pleasure to introduce the moderator of this next panel, who is a past Chicago Innovation Award winner. And it is Sarah Elizabeth Ippel. She's the founder and CEO of the Academy of Global Citizenship. And she raised $85 million to build Cultivate Collective, which is a climate-focused community campus that is transforming how schools connect children, communities, and the planet through sustainable food innovation. She is a superstar, and we're delighted to have her moderate this panel. So please, everyone, welcome Sarah Elizabeth Ippel.
All right, is everyone feeling super fired up now that we've just talked about the sense of urgency? And let's get optimistic and let's get inspired. I'm so excited to be with this extraordinary group of individuals. Come on up. We've got Howard Lerner, who's the CEO of Environmental Law and Policy Center. And Garry Cooper, CEO and co-founder of Rheaply and general partner at Long Jump. And Naomi Davis, CEO and founder of Blacks and Green. All right, it's time to talk about action. And fortunately, we've got some incredible action happening in our own backyard here in Chicago. And so I'm thrilled that we're going to be able to hear from these change makers who are working on the ground and in our communities. So we've got these bold concepts that people are taking into action, and let's kind of dive in and hear more about how all of these things kind of became a reality. So to get us started, I'd love if each of you could just take a couple of minutes and share your organization's primary model, kind of what sparked the mission, and what is the real world impact look like on the ground today? Yeah, Howard, you can start.
Right. I serve as the CEO and founder of the Environmental Law and Policy Center. A lot of you know us. We're the premier environmental legal advocacy and eco-business innovation organization in the Midwest. Here's why we started. You start with solutions, not with problems. Solutions are, how do we deal with the fact that the Midwest is the center of climate change problems? We're also the center of solutions. Right? We have the largest number of old coal plants still running. We have some of the 5 out of the top 9 states in terms of wind power development. We have 3 of the top states in terms of solar energy development, okay? Hey, what number in the country do you think Illinois is on wind power development? 50 states. Come on. 13. 5. We're now number 5. Think about it. 20 years ago, would you have thought we would be 5? We're number 6 in terms of solar. We're getting better on energy efficiency. Solutions that deal with the problem. The problem is we have a climate crisis. We need to solve it. We need to take meaningful actions to get it done. There was a gap in the Midwest. There was not a public interest environmental law center. We went to fill the gap. We've built an organization. The budget is $14 million, 56 staff people, attorneys, MBAs, public policy specialists, communication specialists, getting stuff done. There may have been a time when I would have needed to say, here's why what we do in the courts is important. I don't need to say that today, okay? Last year, our phrase was meet the moment. This year, it's get stuff done. And we have a staff that's highly motivated. We work with many of the people in the room. The last panel, everybody on the panel was a client or a colleague. And I just got to say it because we're at Ignite class. If it can't stand the heat, get out of the kiln, okay? So that's what we do. We get to work with all of you to get stuff done, positive solutions to make a difference of our climate change crisis. Thanks for inviting me to be a part of the panel. And Garry, to you.
Thanks, Howard. So my name is Garry Cooper, and I'm a bit of a fish out of these waters. So my story is I trained scientist. So for 6 years, I was working on tumors in the uterus of women. And then for about 12 years, I was working on Parkinson's disease at Northwestern. And I happened to notice about 18 years ago about how wasteful my laboratory was. And so instead of doing nothing about it, I was also reading the news around this thing called the Paris Accords in 2015 and asking, wait, what could I as a scientist do to kind of be a part of the movement to fight, quote, the global change in climate? So my offering was what now is this company called Rheaply that I founded and lead today about 11 years ago. And what Rheaply does is we try to help large organizations reuse physical products that they've bought, first internally to a colleague who might not know that they're available, and then back into their community for nonprofits, remanufacturers, small businesses who might want those products instead of them going to landfill. When I think about our impact, so on our website, so someone could probably look faster than me, quoting me on some numbers here, but I think last year we've surpassed $500 million of stuff that's on our platform that would otherwise go into the landfill. I think that's something over 26. I think that's about 26.3 million products that we've amassed last year. Something like 10 megatons of waste was diverted just last year. And we saved our customers, and I see Ian from Rush, one of our most amazing customers in the back. We saved our customers in aggregate last year nearly $50 million of spend. And so when I think about it, I know we're talking about some other questions, our message is like, if you spend less, it also helps the environment and your bottom line. And that's what we've been doing for the last decade, I guess. To Naomi.
Wow. I'm still recovering from your numbers there. Hey, Sarah Elizabeth. That's one of my sheroes. So, as a child of the civil rights movement, what I was imprinted with was the power of people to organize and change everything. And we had the moral high ground, we had the ear of the world, we were organized, we had cash flows, and we took ground and we made progress. And 50 years later, fast forward, we have a zero wealth register as a people, African Americans in this country, as wealth is measured and indexed. And I spent decades really haunted by the idea that I could grow up in this beautiful walk to work, walk to shop, walk to learn, walk to play village where we owned the businesses, we owned the land, and we lived this conservation lifestyle. We were not so far from the farm. The last two words my mother spoke before she died. I am the proud granddaughter of Mississippi sharecroppers, and like 7 million others, my family voted with their feet and moved up south for freedom and economic opportunity, and landed in cities from east to west to here in the Midwest. My Aunt Naomi settled here in Chicago and made those places great and were due for self. And that great migration culture, spirit of creativity and courage and industry and faith and love, I couldn't find that on the register in the ways that I had come to know it and love it and believe in it as a child, and it wouldn't let me go. And that's where Blacks in Green came from. That's where the Sustainable Square Mile came from. And what we do is we're out to recreate that walkable village. That means you can walk to work, walk to shop, walk to learn, walk to play. That means we're building economies in energy, horticulture, housing, tourism, and waste. That means that we are aiming to increase the rate at which neighbor-owned businesses are created and sustained. It means we're building the capacity of neighbors to own, develop, and manage their property in their community. And it means that that conservation lifestyle gets reinvented here in the age of climate crisis, meaning we are producing our own energy, growing our own food, cleaning our own water, and recycling our own waste. And that is what the 8 principles of green village building that I wrote almost 20 years ago now and have been implementing as the Sustainable Square Mile solution. That's what it means. It means that Black communities hit first and worst by the impacts of climate crisis and resourced essentially least and last, and that do for self spirit is alive and well in the hood, and that yes, we can. 44? Because I'm just a stone throw from the Obama Presidential Center as well. But the idea is that yes, we can, and what if Black communities could be known for being beautiful and prosperous and comfortable and joyous and self-sustaining in the ways that human beings are born to be. And so that is, you're like, well, what does that have to do with climate? Well, Sarah will get us to that, but it is what we call a whole system solution for the whole system problem common to Black communities everywhere. And in the process of being a holistic solution, neighbors are resilient against the harms of climate crisis in ways that they otherwise would not be.
Well, at the Academy for Global Citizenship and Cultivate Collective, we often talk about conviction and hope. And this group has got conviction. And I hope that you are all kind of tapping into this feeling of hope as you hear about the action that you are all taking. But before we dive further, I'd love to do a quick audience poll to hear from you in terms of who ultimately do you think is responsible to step up and solve the crisis? And I believe there's an official poll over here. So people want to participate in that.
I love these.
And for our panelists who might not be able to see it, we've got government, business and industry, entrepreneurs and innovators, local communities, and all of us. All right, I think we've got a trending.
This is amazing.
Very interesting. Wow. All right. A bit of a spread, but a majority all of us.
One bucket's not growing whatsoever. Oh.
Okay, yeah, I was with you on that one. Like, what?
Well, I'd love to dive in, Naomi, to kind of local communities. And your model is so deeply place-based.
Yeah.
And building trust and physical infrastructure, literally block by block, is difficult. And I'm curious if you could share with us some of the obstacles that you've experienced, and then, of course, some of the successes, and how this work is kind of fundamentally shifting a community's climate resiliency.
Yeah, well, some of the obstacles have been the idea that, someone else is supposed to do it for us. So when we look at the communities, local communities has got 1% of your vote there. And that's, I think you're probably responding to this idea that people are not galvanizing and mobilizing themselves in ways that, maybe we've seen examples of it or we're hoping for. The idea that in the way things work around here in government, and I'm deeply, deeply embedded now in all of the sectors, all of those sectors there. And I would, of course, agree with folks here that it's all of the above. But the idea that along the way, nobody wanted to hear what I had to say. I wasn't relevant. I was just Naomi in the hood, and all of the big organizations doing their planning and doing their 100-year and 50-year and 10-year and their quality of life plans. They had the currency to have an idea, but I didn't. So I had no currency in my neighborhood. I had no currency with the sectors, and obviously those are barriers. Also, I was broke. So what do you do when you have no money? And that's how, that's the sea that I was swimming in, against which happy to say that I'll call it a victory. I'll say we've prevailed, because so you want to hear about on the ground. What's happening right now is that we have 5 capital projects on the ground. We have it's a way of putting in infrastructure, built environment as well as natural environment in our sustainable square mile, which is basically a square mile. How do you build nodes like our headquarters, the Green Living Room, which is a place where people come and learn and talk and share. You can't do anything in the genre that I'm working in if you're leading and no one's following. You're just out there, right? So building a base of neighbors who are bought in, who will show up, who will stand for you, who will spread the word, that was always part of job one. And that's not necessarily typical of what, well, maybe it is typical of how we see climate solutions. The idea that we have, geothermal. We're building we're in the process of building a microgrid. We have a high-speed water filtration system that we're bringing in against the boiled water alerts that are becoming more and more frequent. We are looking at how we create those jobs that are right there in the neighborhood and by the people, for the people. And horticulturally, we're part of the Chicago Region Tree Initiative, and we've planted over 500 trees in our neighborhood. It matters that you're invested in reforestation. It matters that we've got 4 public gardens that we have cultivated. It's our dime for our neighborhood. We pay to to buy the land, cultivate the land, and share the land. It's not something that you see a typical community-based organization doing, but it is green infrastructure. And whether it's ecologically, scientifically organized to make sure we've got a stable ecosystem, or whether it is beauty, or whether it's cool, and it's all those things. So a whole system solution includes all of those, and an affordable housing model that we won a prize for, and we're in the middle of developing.
Wow. What an inspiration. Yeah, I think that deserves a round of applause. Damn. Over the last 2 decades, some of you know that I've been on this mission and held this fundamental belief that public schools can be transformed into these regenerative community hubs, these sustainable community centers. Yeah, I get fired up about it too. And I, along with my visionary colleagues, some of them are here, at AGC and Cultivate Collective, have now reimagined not just this school, but now we've created this 6.5-acre hub that's producing all of its own energy, 107%, 50 geothermal wells, 550 kilowatts of photovoltaics, a federally qualified healthcare center, a 2-acre farm, apiaries, orchards. All of this is happening on the southwest side. So if you haven't yet visited, you must come and sort of experience what's happening in our city, right? It's truly, truly extraordinary. And I think it's proof that public schools and communities can really serve as these climate resilient, regenerative hubs of innovation. So I'd love to shift gears and shift gears kind of to you, Garry and Howard, really talking about how to dismantle the extractive mindset. No small potatoes. And a key goal of any climate solution really is how we look at changing behavior at scale. So whether that's a way that, managing materials in this case, or how a utility company plans its energy infrastructure. So curious if you can each talk a little bit about these specific tools, And what are some recent successes that have changed how major institutions operate?
Can we start?
Yeah.
So in our world, we work mostly B2B, and sometimes it's big B to big B, and sometimes it's a big B to small b. That world is extraordinarily good at spending. Think of everyone who works in a company right now. The bigger your company is, the more systems you even have to spend more money. Those same companies are even better at just throwing things away. So we have this really crazy system where it's like we're really good, we spend millions of dollars in spending, and then we spend less, but millions of dollars in throwing things away or storing them. And so when we come onto the scene, these three little founders 11 years ago goes, what if you didn't spend so much money? And what if you then didn't throw so much stuff away? And the thing I know now, we work with nearly every university in the city. We work with a lot of big businesses in the city, in the country. We just started internationalizing, so we're in Poland and in Germany. And what I know now is that we have to get as good as those spending systems or as good as throwing something away. Because if you really want a climate solution to work at scale, it has to be in the workflow, in the vibe of what people normally do. It's just more sustainable or more fiscally responsible. So what we've been trying to do at Rheaply is building a technology that feels like Amazon, but ain't Amazon. It's just the stuff that you don't know that your company already has. It works like Amazon, it works on your phone, it isn't, and can tell you, I hope it's not crappy software. I think it's really great software. We want that experience to be just like purchasing, but it ain't purchasing. Similarly, when you need to get rid of stuff, for half of our business life, we never wanted to touch materials. We just wanted to be a software company. And after COVID, what we realized is as people started to downsize their corporate real estate portfolios, we had to go touch materials because they were just flying out the door before we could find reuse opportunities in the community for them. So we attached the service part of our business where we have guys in trucks that will come and pick up the stuff that you don't want, and we'll find a community outlet for it. To give you this story, we have one of our most amazing customers is HBO. And in Charleston, has anyone seen The Righteous Gemstones? I actually have not seen it. Okay, but thank you, HBO. So they were 6 seasons. They were getting rid of it. They put all the stuff that they had been using on this set for 6 years in an old Sears mall, something like 1 million square feet. And they were going to just throw all that stuff away. And we said, here, take our proposal. It's cheaper. It's cheaper than throwing the things away. We go in there, we send 2 people. Thank you, Emma. Thank you. We send them down for 2 months. They inventory everything in that 1 million square feet. And we were able to donate $5 million of the stuff in that warehouse back into the community. And in one story, there was a young woman who unfortunately had suffered through domestic violence. And she was about to lose her children because the court had determined that she didn't have the furniture, the bedding, these kinds of things to have kids. And so the domestic violence shelter is in our network, happened to shop from that Sears, and she was able to keep her kids. That story was a part of a submission for an Emmy between Rheaply and HBO just this year. We were finalists, we didn't get it. But so thank you. So I didn't know the work, but so thank you. When I think about scaling, it's both this kind of how can we fit in, be a little bit cheaper, be a little bit more in the background. It's nothing really new, but it's all new. But also to tell the story, to say like, actually it's easier and cheaper and more impactful not to throw things away. That is not an easy thing to do. So I'll get off my sermon and pass it to Howard.
How do I follow this? How do I follow all this? Okay. I'm going to talk about robbing banks,
Okay, good start.
pushing rocks up hills and down hills, and innovation, okay? Willie Sutton, the bank robber, was asked, why does he rob banks? Anybody know?
I do.
Couple are.
That's where money is.
That's where the money is. Okay. If you're looking at climate solutions, 70 to 75% of the greenhouse gases come from two sectors, transportation sector and energy sector, okay? That's where the pollution is. Here's the role of government, business, and all of us in the nice question that Sarah Elizabeth and others put up on the screen. If we're dealing with transportation, that's about government and us. If government doesn't put the right infrastructure in place, passenger rail, the CTA, if the CTA is allowed to go off a financial cliff, we don't have good public transit. Okay. So that's where the public transit legislation that passed in Springfield that so many of us worked on makes a real difference, because then we have a real choice. We can take the CTA, we can ride a bike. I took a divvy over here. We can take a train from city to city. We can make a difference in terms of reducing carbon. But we don't get that choice unless government is investing in the fundamental infrastructure. No good CTA, no good public transit, no green city. When it comes to the energy sector, that's about whether we're pushing rocks up a hill, which is hard, or you're letting a rock come down a hill. If the federal government is supporting through tax incentives and other things, solar energy and wind power, and enforcing and applying the Clean Air Act against coal plants and gas plants, then you create the economic circumstance where the economy transforms and we get cleaner energy and the old highly polluting stuff shuts down. That's what was happening under the IRA, under the Biden administration. Solar and wind and energy efficiency were coming downhill with that rock and really moving forward. People in our homes, we had more chances to buy solar and wind power. Our utilities were buying more clean energy through renewable energy standards that a lot of us work to get done, and we're cleaning up the system. If, on the other hand, we're within the Trump administration, business is still developing solar and wind. The reason is solar energy plus storage clears the market economically. It's cheaper than gas, it's cheaper than coal, it's cheaper than nuclear. But if the government is withdrawing the tax incentives, which is what President Trump is doing, and if the government is issuing bogus emergency orders from the Department of Energy that requires the Campbell coal plant in Western Michigan, the Schaefer coal plant in Indiana to keep running, even though the utilities want to shut them down, even though they're not economic, we're back pushing that rock up a hill. So that's about government and business. Because most of us, we might put a solar panel on our roof. We've probably taken out an incandescent bulb and put in an LED. Yes, even I can do that. Even all of us can do that. But when it comes to can we really do at scale solar and wind and so forth, notwithstanding some really good community projects, at scale, we need government to have us be supporting businesses with the right incentives so the rock is going downhill, not using our money, ratepayer and taxpayer money, to subsidize running coal plants that aren't otherwise economic. We're in the Court of Appeals on that issue. Innovation. Take a look at old coal plant sites around the Midwest. There are a lot of them. Coal plants that have shut down. If you think about an old coal plant site, I'll bet you most of you will think about there are these big smokestacks, right? Maybe they've been knocked down. There's a lot of toxic crud there. There's a lot of sort of old pieces of coal floating around. It's behind a gate. It's a brownfield site. Think about it a little bit differently. All coal plants are on lakes and rivers because in order to produce electricity, they burn coal, produces heat like a tea kettle, boils water, turns a turbine, turns a generator, right? If you're on water behind a gate, 60 years at the Trenton Channel Coal Plant, 30 miles south of Detroit, at the Karn Coal Plant on Saginaw Bay, at that Campbell Coal Plant in West Olive, Michigan. All of a sudden, if you take away that gate and you look at this differently, you're looking at what? Waterfront property, lakefront property. And you're looking at where the coal plant used to be connected for a hardwired connection into the grid. So we've been working with Consumers Energy in Detroit Edison at the Karn coal plant. And I'm using this as an example because there are literally 150 coal plant sites around the Midwest. 255,000 solar panels being installed at the Karn coal plant site, producing clean energy, fed right into the grid from the existing connection. And all that bayfront, waterfront property along the Saginaw River, along Saginaw Bay, there's a wonderful design we worked on with the Saginaw Basin Land Conservancy, bikeways, pedways, wetlands protections, canoe paths, et cetera. We'll be meeting again with Detroit Edison DTE later this month. Trenton Coal Plant, south of Detroit, right on the river, bikeways, pedways, wonderful green space. The smokestacks have already been knocked down. 200 megawatts of energy storage already in, another 200 megawatts coming. So P to P plus RE, power plants to parklands plus renewable energy. Innovation, how do you re-envision the old energy sector and transform it both into the new energy sector that's cleaner, deals with climate solutions, and provides something that right now, almost everybody in America, whichever side of the political aisle you are on, everybody loves parks. That's the sort of innovation. So trying to get those rocks to go downhill, governmental policy, focusing on the places where the pollution, where the money is, Willie Sutton rule, energy and transportation, and looking at the system and how do we innovate and transform from the old world of energy to the new, cleaner world, and a world in which people have more parks, more outdoor recreation, more green space, as both of you have been talking about in their communities. These are opportunities, these are solutions, let's get them done.
Howard, you're making my job so easy. I was going to bring it back to the community level after talking about sort of major institutions. And so I love that you kind of brought it back to the parks and brought it back to what is so connected to all of us, right? A quick plug, if you have not read a book called Nature in the Mind, I just finished reading it. It's a Chicago researcher, University of Chicago, Mark Berman, and it is really getting me jazzed. Like having read this book, it's fascinating and talks about the data and the research around trees and parks and nature and how this is impacting our brains. Very, very interesting. But circling back to the community level, for anyone who wants to sort of chime into this question, true common ground really means ensuring that every community and every individual has access to this infrastructure, to this climate resilient infrastructure. So what can this look like at a neighborhood level to really create a more secure and economically resilient future for everyone? What are those models, or how do your models kind of help contribute to that or prove that, or models and also work that's helping to make that kind of like an essential imperative for our future?
Well, I think you have to be holistic, and when the royal I wrote the 8 Principles of Green Village Building 20 years ago, it was designed to pull together the range of activities that could be executed together by the people. There's so much great work that's going on in silos and in silos within communities and across communities. And it's our opinion that these silos have to come down, and these projects and programs and people have to be interlaced together. So the idea that you have an energy solution in the same place where you have a horticultural solution, in the same place where you have an affordable housing solution, in the same place where you have a tourism solution, and I'll say a little bit more about that, and a waste solution. How do you get the solutions on the ground? Because that's all the policy in the world isn't going to be the metric. So the idea that we have challenged government and challenged foundations to fund not just a project, but the whole project. It's easier for a project like yours, which is a school and a campus, and it's a central consolidated idea. But when you have a neighborhood and it's scattered interests and scattered owners, it's a very difficult thing. The capital required, and I invite people to do this kind of back of the envelope exercise, which is, okay, our neighborhood, and it's typical of black neighborhoods, unfortunately, anywhere you go in the country, has an outsized number of vacant lots, vacant houses, abandoned houses. And if you just do the math of what it takes to build on a commercial corridor, one building, several stories, different occupants, businesses, what does that take, and multiply it times a few thousand? You're talking billions of dollars that are needed to scale. This is a word that we're using here, scale. And this is not me whining and moaning, but I'll say, when was the last time you heard of $1 billion project downtown in the Loop? Well, all the time. When was the last time you heard about $1 billion project in the Hood? Well, never. And that's literally what it's going to take in order to resuscitate and weave together the holistic solution. Look, climate crisis is real. Someone asked recently, is Chicago a hurricane alley now? The sign on the front of our building was torn off in one of the last extreme weather events. A solution will not happen at the individual level. If you have all of your canned meat and all of your water and all of your fortress pulled together, where do you think people are going to come if they don't have theirs in these climate emergencies? And so the idea is that we must organize within neighborhoods and at scale with all of the aspects, including affordable housing. And people don't typically think about affordable housing as anything relating to climate, but migration, forced migration, is a major disruption and an economic disaster for the neighborhoods that have to accommodate them. So I'm not sure that answers your question, but it is the basis for everything that provides a solution.
All right, I'm going to segue right from Nay. So $1 billion solution. I'm going to give 3 points. Energy efficiency. Much of your gas and electric bills are paying simply for the commodity, for natural gas and for the coal, the uranium, et cetera, the natural gas that's used for the electric system. That is more than $1 billion in 10 years. It's actually quicker than 10 years, that flows right out of Chicago neighborhoods because we're energy inefficient in our housing and in our buildings. If we make our buildings more efficient, people save money on their electricity and gas bills. And since we don't produce natural gas here, it's coming from Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Used to come from Venezuela, Mexico, et cetera. That's the sucking sound. Dollars just going right out of our neighborhoods, right out of our economy. So number one, you want to keep money in neighborhoods. You want to make housing more affordable. We need to be smart about energy efficiency and not wasting money in every community in Chicago. Secondly, you want to have resiliency in Chicago communities. You got to have good public transit. People need to be able to get around on CTA and buses and trains. People need to have access to bike lanes. People need to have access to divvy bikes. Communities need to be walkable, which both of you have talked about. We got to have a good transit system. People need to be able to get around, and that goes to resiliency. Third, parks, the outdoors, green spaces. I've said in a different context, we worked with community groups to stop a toxic waste dump from being sited along the Lake Michigan shoreline in the Southeast Side Environmental Justice Community in Chicago. The Alliance of the Southeast, Friends of the Parks, ELPC, we rocked, okay? Chicago's lakefront is for people and parks, not for toxic waste dumps. And in all of our communities, when you're talking about vacant lots and vacant spaces, these are places we need to figure out how do you make better community parks so that people are in communities around Chicago. They can have parks in their neighborhoods along the lakefront, make it a better place for all of us to live. And if you have, as Michael Davidson mentioned before, more trees in the parks and in the neighborhoods, that's pulling carbon dioxide out of our communities and making us more resilient, safer places to be. So 3, energy efficiency, keep money in our communities. Public transit, bikes, the ability to get around in all communities in our city, that's about resilience. And parks, so it's not just this technical stuff, it's about we can really be in communities we love and enjoy. All right, 1, 2, 3.
Definitely. I'm sorry, go ahead. It's just that, it's not very glorious and glamorous work. It's are you up at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning with 10 of your neighbors, making sure that one of your dozen gardens is available, beautiful, inspiring, that communities are engaged, that they know that there is a scientific basis for planting a tree, for hugging a tree. And, in Chicago, where there's so much stormwater runoff and basement flooding as issues, it's a thing to have a rain garden. It's a thing to have deep-rooted prairie systems in your parkways. And these are the small things that add up to transformation. That's how Blacks in Green works.
I just want to, first of all, I love what they just said. And my comments might be a little triggering because I want to take us all back to, for me, the beginning of time, which was the summer of 2020 during COVID, because I can't remember the world before that. And literally, literally in this city, we at Rheaply got an opportunity to work with our city, because at that time, locally, if you're a small business, if you're a nonprofit, you could not find PPE for your students, for your patients, or for your employees. And the city had passed an ordinance saying you couldn't open your business if you didn't have those things. So where do we get these things when the global supply chain has broken down? So the mayor's office had a really good idea. Hey, Rheaply, change your platform to be a local platform so that dentists and veterinarians who weren't using ventilators or PPE, or beer producers who could make hand sanitizer, they could make these bespoke products, put them on your platform, and then local nonprofits and local small businesses could get those things for free. The city paid. And it turns out, In 2 months, in the summer of 2020, we were able to do something like 600,000 transactions, so 600,000 pieces of PPE going from those places to small business and nonprofits so they could open up safely. We actually won a Chicago Innovation Award for it that year. And I say that. And I say that because it gave me, to your question, it gave me this idea about how circularity, the world that Rheaply operates in, needs not to be this big global supply chain reversed. It needs to be these tiny little local circular economies, little cities, little neighborhoods, maybe just in your own company, that are all operating and then have a connection to another small local circular economy. I did a TED Talk about it. And it turns out, we've done the math, that if we can actually do 1,000 local circular economies around the globe, we can save 67% of the carbon that we need to cut by 2030. So it's not just a materials and waste issue, it's a carbon issue. We proved it in COVID, and it'd be ashamed not to learn that when we were in an emergency situation, what we did was depend on local resources and not global ones. We should do that again and do it more at scale when we're not in an emergency.
Well, that brings us perfectly to the next audience poll question. And now you might think that we're trying to trick you with what Garry was just sharing. But if you want to pull up the next question, which is, really, which climate innovation, if you guys can see this, is currently estimated to have the highest impact on reducing global carbon emissions? And Luke and Paul, there's a correct answer, right? Oh, it's whatever. Okay, it's like what people feel or think is. I didn't know if there was. Yes. So option A is direct air capture and carbon removal. B is utility scale battery storage and renewable grids. C is electric vehicles and autonomous transit. And D is plant-based diets and food waste reduction. This is juicy. It's like a good pun for our winning column here for plant-based diets, but something I think will be interesting for us all to debate and talk about during the break. I know that we're approaching the end, and I would love for this magnificent group of humans to impart some wisdom, maybe a call to action for this room. Does anybody want to start?
All right, I'll start. Nobody ever said being a public advocate, whether you're a community advocate, whether you're a business entrepreneur at the community level like Garry is, whether you're a public interest attorney like I am. Nobody ever said this is easy. You know, Nate's point about getting up at 9 o'clock on a Saturday morning. This is tough. You want to make a difference? Roll up your sleeves, work with your friends and neighbors, focus on some things that really matter to you, where you have the skills and the knowledge and ability, or you have friends or neighbors or family who have particular skills, knowledge, and abilities. Roll up your sleeves, make a difference, get stuff done. We're all in this together. The notion that somehow it's going to be easy, we're going to solve global climate change, this is tough stuff. Commit to it, get engaged, roll up your sleeves, get stuff done. All right? We're all in it together.
I love that because that was actually the last line of my TED Talk 3 years ago. I think the exact line was, in the fight against global climate change, we're all neighbors.
Like that one too.
So I would say, I just finished a book, 2 quotes. I just finished a book by former Senator Ben Sasse, who's unfortunately going through a cancer fight called Them, which I definitely suggest. In the foreword, he ends the foreword with, if you want purpose, plant roots and tend them. That's the first quote. Second quote, my favorite quote from Michelle Obama, do something. So what I might combine that from a Garry leave behind would be to do something for someone else. Like, you know, I spend my days trying to help people like N but I also spend my days trying to help other founders and other entrepreneurs who are looking up at me trying to build their own solution. I don't get paid for that. I do it because. And so what I might leave behind is, plant your roots and tend them, do something for someone else.
Yeah. If it's one thing that I've learned over the last 15 years, dozen years, is that coalition works can change everything. Some of you in the room have been a part of the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition, which I guess 200 of our closest friends over 12 years created the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, which didn't it just change everything? The idea that there is a place for you to volunteer, there is a place for you to donate, there's a place for you to do those two things together. And my call to action is, if you understand that the population of the world doesn't live in Washington, D.C., and isn't going to get a trickle-down impact, that anything that is really going to be done is going to be done in a ground-up way in the communities, I would say the Sustainable Square Mile Coalition, join us. Join an activist group in your community, in your realm. Give money. I'm going to say to you, if you're a person who talks to legislators, talk to them about moving money into the masses, because access to capital is not just a cliche. I talked for years and years. I'd go down to the Department of Planning and Development, and I had my great ideas, and they were very polite, and they'd shake and nod, and then they would be like, well, what's your sources of funds? And that would be that. Nothing can be done without, at the end of the day, you gotta have resources. So make sure that you're doing your part to give, to advocate for giving, show up, volunteer, and do it with others of like mind. We can get there from here.
Well, I will close it out by inviting every single one of you to lunch, and not just any lunch, but lunch on our farm at the Academy for Global Citizenship. We will feed you a beautiful farm-to-table feast, a plant-based feast. But no, we've been hosting these farm lunches as a way for people to come together, to engage in dialogue with their fellow Chicagoans and neighbors, and come for some hope. This next generation, we've got 600 children learning in this public environmental education model every day. So come for a good dose of hope and inspiration for how we can all be part of the solution. Thanks so much.
What was the result of the last poll?